Hi, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Chit Chat Podcast. And I am so excited about today's episode because who doesn't want to build wealth? Who doesn't want money? Who doesn't want to be financially secured? So this is a great episode for you to catch and sign in, get all the nuggets you can get today from our guests on today. I need you guys checking in, chiming in. Let's log in. Let's be active and engaged. Ask the questions that you need for our guest on today, who's going to be sharing with us on how to build wealth, how to have financial literacy, what to expect. If you're trying to build a legacy, especially if you have children, this episode is for you. You need to know some things so that way moving forward, whether and everything fits in our schedule and our budget, how we see fit. So everybody's gonna be different. So don't look at what somebody else is doing. You can get yours catered to your own needs and how you can afford your affordability to things, but don't miss out on having wealth or building wealth and having financial literacy for you or your family. So this is a great opportunity to find out some things that you may not have known, and that is open and out there for you guys. And I want you guys to take part in here, asking questions. Jada will post your questions. So if you put your questions in the comments, Jada will highlight it to make sure that our guests can answer the questions that they have that comes up, and provide you with resources that they have from their business and what they have established as a couple. One of the most important things, if you're definitely a married couple and you're in our audience, I please need you to chime in and check this episode out. This is a married couple. One of the biggest things that kill marriages nowadays is finances. And so this is an opportunity for you guys to take part in, find out what you need to find out, see what worked for them, how they're building their legacy and their wealth, and get some information. I got my notebook. I'm ready. I'm excited to take part in. Hey, sis. Checking in for Warner Robbins. Thank you for checking in. Make sure you share from your page, sis, the live, so that way we can get other people invited to check it out as well. Thank you for checking in. So if you're coming in, check in, let us know that you're in here. We're going to bring our special guests on here, James and Asha Speller. I'm excited about what they're going to be bringing to us today. Please post your questions if you have questions. If there's things that you're trying to find out about building wealth and leaving a legacy for your family, your children, your children's children, whatever the case may be, please take this opportunity to chime in, check out this episode, and ask all the questions you need. I met this wonderful couple a couple months ago when I got invited for a business opportunity. End up being one of their clients, and I am so glad that I did, because y'all already know how I am about my kids, but I have my two kids that I know that I want to make sure that they are taken care of when the good Lord decides to take me home. And so I took on that opportunity. I do want to do more. So maybe once I do this retirement and see how this retirement goes in 6 months, we'll see how that goes. So I'm gonna be taking some notes and find out from them today when it comes to retirement, what are some of the advantages that we can take part in with our investing and our wealth building and all of that. So, but without further ado, we're gonna have our special guests come on, and I'll let them introduce themselves and their business and how they got started in that, and we'll dive straight into the episode. Hi, guys.
Hello. Hi, Shadana. Thanks for having us on.
Hey, Shadana, how you doing?
Look, I love it. And I when I was looking at the flyer my daughter had made for you guys, I was like, they look like money. So what a great way to talk about money when you're looking like money.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. So give our audience a brief identification of who you guys are, what you guys do, what your business is, and what we're going to be discussing on today with you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Asha Speller. This is my husband.
Hey, hi. How y'all doing? My name is James.
Yes, and so we are actually co-owners of our business. It's called Service to Legacy Financial. We are in the financial marketing space, but we deal a lot in financial education. And so what we're focused on right now is helping people build legacy. It's literally in our names. And so what we do, we actually utilize our specific skills in the life insurance industry to show people how they can actually build wealth in the long term. Just factoring in, different concepts that a lot of people have never heard about before. So I'm dealing a lot with education. Hmm.
Okay, and I think education is important because we can't invest or do things when we're not educated on what we're doing and how it benefits us. So I think the education piece is highly important. So I'm glad that you guys, are taking on educating people first, not just signing
Hmm.
people up or doing things or whatever. You want to
Yeah.
make sure these people are educated in what this is going to do for them and their life going forward. So kudos for that.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you guys, since we're opening up our segment, what does financial literacy means to you guys personally? What does that mean to you, being financial literate or having financial literacy?
Absolutely. I can start first. Just
Yeah.
like, thinking about my story, I'm actually an immigrant to this country. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. And, I really saw my parents. My parents were like my first example of, why financial literacy was so important because they were really hard workers. They were really hard workers. They worked hard. They had 6 kids. They still made things, happen for themselves, but I definitely like saw them being like overworked, not necessarily understanding, how to manage their money. And, I really saw, even though they really gave us a great life, I know, finances weren't always like, the places that they were most solid at because we still lived kind of like paycheck to paycheck, that kind of thing. And so, growing up, I always wonder like, how do people like really get ahead? How do people really get ahead in life? And I realized it's because you have to have a good foundation when it comes to understanding how money works. And so, once I realized that in my grown age, I was in my 20s, realizing I was like repeating the patterns that I saw my parents do, I was like, okay, I don't want to continue this cycle of, struggling with finances and things like that. And I really thought to myself, how can I, change, the trajectory of my family moving forward? And so I decided to get in the financial education space so that I can educate myself first. Financial literacy to me meant, putting my family just like in a better position in the future, just based off of how this world works. Money is involved in so many different things. And so I would say like that's basically, what it was for me. But I don't know what would
Yeah.
you say?
I would say it's almost similar. It's crazy because just growing up, I'm originally from Philadelphia. So just growing up there and seeing, my grandparents and my parents just provide for us, but also be leaders in the community because, leading by example in the community is super important because most people don't got that hope on what's the next overall. So seeing that growing up in Philadelphia and then transition out here, really understanding that my family didn't have no foundation with finances because you see the burdens of people when you lose people in your life and you see
Right.
the burdens that's like man like it hits you when it happened to you.
Right.
So just really educating people on how to actually just learn about it, right? Just learn about it. A lot of people don't want to take that first step to just learn and educate themselves, really, because a lot of people are struggling on, what's the next step. You've been working at certain jobs and things like that, and you're figuring out how can I really build a legacy for my family overall. So, just educating is super important.
Oh.
Yes. And speaking of education for financial literacy, why do you think financial education is not like commonly taught in schools like it should be?
I feel like that's like a deep answer to that. That's a deep answer. I don't necessarily think that, financial literacy is like the focus of necessarily the education system
Yeah.
because I mean, if you want to go back in history, we have heard how, the schools were originally started really to have people, just be more workers rather than, necessarily like big thinkers.
Yeah,
But
entrepreneurs, things like that.
but yeah, I would say that, it's one of those things. Financial literacy gives people a lot of power and agency over themselves. Okay. And, one thing about when you actually master financial literacy, you put yourself in a position that you have more opportunities, you have more options because you actually really understand, how to navigate through life and put your family in a better position. And so sometimes, I think we still need to catch up in that aspect when it comes to the education system. That's why you see a lot of people, they might not even be using the public system. They're trying to do like charter schools and, all these other schools where it's a little bit more common. But I do know there are people behind the scenes. James and
Yeah.
I actually got partnered with Dunbar High School not too long ago. And if you guys know about Dunbar, Dunbar was actually the first high school in America that African Americans were able to attend, basically. And so they're kind of like one of those like pioneer type schools. Like they actually had a financial
Yeah.
literacy
Yeah.
programs, in their schools, but it's really due to the teachers, understanding how important that is, and they're fighting to get these kind of programs in the schools. And so overall, I think it's one of those things where I think it's just like you need people that can make a little bit more of an effort to put it in the schools.
Yeah.
You have to kind of fight for it because it's something that we understand can dramatically change, like I said, the trajectory of your life once you understand how it works. And so, yeah, it might not be all over right now, but I definitely think, with more and more people getting hip to, understanding how all this stuff works, we're going to be seeing it more in the schools in the future.
Yeah, I believe it's trending up right now, especially in
Mhm.
the schools. Like just being in Dunbar High School, just seeing that, that course and that event we was taking place at, I'm like, man, this is crazy. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is good because we need them to see it at a younger age where they can
Mhm.
prepare themselves when they get into the adult world and be like, oh, I wasn't just throwing in the pool,
Yeah.
100
Right.
something, right?
Mhm.
Right.
So
They can know how to, I know a lot of people don't use checkbooks hardly anymore,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah,
how to fill out a check.
Yeah.
right,
Stuff like
um,
that.
yeah, because
Yeah.
my kids never had, how to, they didn't have checkbooks. But, if I had to tell them to fill out a check, they wouldn't even know how to do it. But
right,
they're so used to like, having a debit card or cash
Mhm.
app or whatever the case.
right,
But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that they understand the importance of knowing what you have, how to
Oh,
manage it, and budget it. And so, when I went into the finance profession or whatever, it made me more conscious
yeah.
of
mm,
if if
mm,
if I got to be taking care of billions of dollars for the government and managing their checkbook, then
Right.
I need to be doing a better job managing my checkbook. And so it was an accountability thing for me.
Mhm.
But it also put it in perspective for me to teach my kids what they need to do and how they need to build stuff and how they need to build their wealth and financial stuff and build credit and all this kind of stuff. And so, we started from there. I kind of started late with them, but I guess better late than never. But
right,
Absolutely.
my son, he has a very high interest into investments and things like that.
Mhm.
And so since he's on an internship right now in LA, he's getting firsthand how to see how wealth and
Yeah.
having that kind of money, present itself with things. He got an opportunity to go check out something from his job. The people put him in a hotel, send him a car to pick him up, and
That's amazing.
made
okay,
wine and dying the whole time he was there. Like, here's some
That's amazing.
complimentary food, whatever you
wow,
need while you're staying here, let us know, because they wanted the business and the service of his job. And so,
yeah,
so he got the opportunity to check that out. But, he's sitting there, talking to people that drive these, some guy showed him his car that was right there. That was a $1 million car. So, he's having these opportunities. And so, it's putting this in perspective to him, which he's already thinking, he thinks big anyways, but it put a whole lot of things in perspective. Like, how much wealth gives you much respect and things that
Yeah.
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 people are doing and how they're moving and how people are being treated that has
Yeah.
kind of, so he's seeing all of that. And so I think that's why education is so important, because if he was misguided and didn't understand it,
Yeah.
it can kind of, be smoke and mirrors for him. And he'd be like, oh, I'm trying to get my money up, get my bag up, do
Right.
do these kind of things. And then, not knowing the hard work that some of those people have put it in and
Yeah.
invested to get to where they got. So, so I'm glad he's getting an opportunity to see that firsthand. So we're going to dive
Yeah.
into our segment. Please tell us how you guys got started with your business, and what prompted you to start this business, and how you providing resources and education out to people with your business.
Absolutely. So I actually got introduced to this industry back in 2020. So my history when it comes to work, I actually don't come from any background in finances at all. I used to be a vet technician. I was in the animal sciences field. And so, for me, I had a really like sharp career pivot once I realized that that industry wasn't necessarily going to lead to the future that I wanted. It's one of those things where I realized like, hey, I need to do something a little bit more if I want to get the kind of lifestyle I want, being able to pick my own hours of when I'm working and, just be able to go on vacations with my family without having to stress about, money not getting, coming in and stuff like that. And so I realized I really wanted to become a business owner. It was one of those things where I was like, business ownership, it does take a lot of risk, there's a lot of risk involved, especially in the beginning. But one thing I know is that business owners are really valued in America. A lot of the most wealthiest people, the people who have the most agency over their time, are business owners. And so I went on a pathway of trying to figure out, how do I become a business owner? I was doing a lot of independent contracting for a very long time. Proud of myself because I was making money on my own terms, yes. But what I didn't realize is that I wasn't necessarily bringing in passive income. Like if I was sick or if I couldn't work one day, I wasn't going to bring in money. And so I still knew that there is something else that I was missing. And during the pandemic, it really was like the perfect time because I had put my, my little business on pause. I had like a dog walking pet sitting business that I was like trying to figure out how to scale up and things like that because, the pandemic, everybody's on lockdown, we were all inside the house and,
Right.
I had a lot of time to think. But I came across this industry really from a referral from my younger sister. She's like 10 years younger than me, but she met one of the brokers on Instagram. And they showed me, how, a lot of things like about how to really, put my money in different vehicles and all this kind of stuff. And I was like really shocked and appalled at myself at that time because I was like 29 years old. I was like, how do I not know this stuff?
Right.
I was so mad at myself. I really was mad at myself. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put myself in a position where, I never have to, worry about, just me not knowing things that are really, really common, just like where to put my money, how my money works in different vehicles. And so, I actually got the opportunity to work with, some brokers in the Maryland area. My husband, actually, he has a funny story too about how we got started because the person that introduced me to the business, her name is Kiana Anderson. She actually met him a year prior.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really funny story.
Yeah. It's crazy. So my background before I got started in the financial service industry, just coming from the hospitality, culinary arts industry. So I've been in that industry for almost like 2 decades now. So, man, I was I worked my way up to the top. I worked in fast food restaurants before. Opened up multiple Ruby Tuesdays in the area. Then went into fine dining, working with Ocean Prime, MGM Graham. I cooked for the Redskins at one point. So I was, doing my thing in the culinary art industry,
Now,
and
for our audience, James is a chef.
Yes. He is a chef.
yes,
Yeah, he's a
yes,
chef. So he's
yes.
a chef in the DMV area. So go ahead.
Appreciate that. And then from there, 2020, I was at MGM Graham. I was almost there for like 5 years, managing restaurants, working with celebrity chefs. And I thought my job was secure, and it really wasn't. I'm like, man, okay. I thought I had job security over here, but
Hmm.
I'm like, dang, I got laid off. I'm like, man, this is crazy. I'm about to get married, start a family, move into our new apartment, things like that. I'm like, what is my next? As a man, I had to provide. So when I saw this opportunity in 2019, I always knew I wanted to start a business some way, somehow. But I knew that, always providing to my community, because I'm like, one thing why I got into being a chef is just people health. A lot of people's not thinking about their health, but also just transferring over to, showing them how to actually manage their wealth is now. So just transitioning it over, it was a no brainer. Especially not having it in my family. My my mom wasn't educated about it, so just going through the trials and tribulations right now, what we're going through, financially wise. But I'm blessed to be in this business overall.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Awesome. And Asha, you brought up something. You said passive income. So
Mm-hmm.
our audience understand what that means, as far
Yeah.
as having passive income or residual income, coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things that I learned, just getting into this industry, is that you really have to separate active income from passive income. Active income is that income that you're earning, just by providing a service. And so, we're, in the life insurance industry. If we help somebody, get, a life insurance policy, we can earn income. Okay, that's earned income. But there's also that passive income. Passive income is the income that you make even when you're not there. That was really the motivation for us, not just to
Yeah.
be life insurance agents, like just like that. We wanted to build a business, like an actual agency. And so we have agents that work with us. We train, help develop them to be independent in this industry as well. And so we earn passive income by helping train and develop these agents in order to go out there independently and provide services to their community. Not only that, even in the product that we have, we can earn passive
Yeah.
income through, the life insurance. As the more people that we help, the more passive income we can actually bring in just by helping people with policies. And so that was really big for me to learn that, because I didn't always want to have to be, grinding. People get into the grind. They're working multiple jobs, trying to bring in the income that they need just to live. And so we really have to learn how to work smarter, not always harder, work smarter, not harder, duplicate your efforts. If you have a skill, instead of you just doing that skill, find a way to train other people to do that, because that can help you bring in passive income. So, that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned in business ownership. It's not just about being talented, it's about, do you have a duplicatable system that can bring you income even when you're sleeping?
Right.
And I love
Mhm.
that because who doesn't want to make money without working?
Yeah.
Right.
You ain't got to work. You ain't got to go to that job for that when you're making that kind of money. So who doesn't want to do that? Um,
Hmm.
and you guys keep hitting on like money management. So what do people need to do if they feel like, I don't know if I have, money to start, investing or
Mm.
putting in. So what is something that you think people need to start doing to learn about money management and how they can contribute to investing in something such as your business?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because honestly, like, we, just in our journey ourselves, learning more about all the different places to put our money was one of the first things that we had to do, because we had to understand, like, what position are we in right now? What position do we want to be in the future? What adjustments do we have to make to live the lifestyle that we want? I think even just getting the advice from mentors. Oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
if we didn't have our mentors just like guiding us throughout, like, hey, this is what I do. It just reminds me, like, even what you were talking about your son, he's surrounding himself with people who are very, in a position where he wants to be right
Yeah.
now, and he's getting a taste of what it is to actually live a lifestyle that he wants. We we also fully believe that, we surround ourselves with people who are 10 times better in a position than we are, and because of that we're able to learn from their successes and learn from their failures. And so one of the biggest things I learned is how to allocate my money. We always factor in, all of the things that,
Yeah.
we care about tithing, so we always are setting aside a certain portion for tithing. We're all about, putting money towards ourselves to invest. Investing in yourself is a really big part of that, whether it's reading books or, setting aside money to read books or going to conferences and stuff like that. But one of the things that I think that we also learn is that it doesn't matter like how much money you're bringing in. The habits start even when you have the smallest amount.
Yeah.
And that's something I definitely learned, from, one of my mentors, like Matt Sapala. He always talks about that. Like, even if you're making like $100 a week, have a set aside portion of what you're putting towards all the things that you care about. Because what you do with the smallest thing, it'll duplicate when you have the larger things. Okay. And so I would say that's really the thing that helped us the most, learning like managing money. It's literally like almost like biblical. Like learning how to manage your finances even when you don't have a lot coming in is
Yeah.
the key to unlock, the wealth that you can have when you actually have more money coming in. And I just saw somebody ask a
Um,
question.
yeah, we have love the idea of putting money in different places, and the ideas from Elodie Hicks. So,
Yeah.
Elodie, are you asking that question, or are you just saying that you love the idea of putting the money? Okay, she likes the idea. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, who doesn't? Because and especially if you have the money to put in um,
Mm-hmm.
different places, that's even better because we want to put ourselves in a position that we have more. We can do more with what we have,
Yeah.
and so the Bible do tell us to whom much is given, much is required. So
All
Mm-hmm.
right.
we want to provide a resource for us for later or for a hard day or for whatever the case may come up. And so so those are the opportunities you have when you put in money in different places and ideas like that. So I love that. So oh, she asking for ideas. So
She's
what
asking for ideas.
yeah,
Okay.
asking for ideas. So what are some different ideas and places that people can move their money into? And you guys brought up one about the insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can probably give us some enlightenment on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually have a presentation. It's called Three Ways Money Grows. And we actually talk about that quite a bit, just the differences between, fixed, index, and variable accounts. And so you can,
Yeah,
take a look
so
at that.
almost like when you just figuring out different ideas to put your money, like when we tell people when you have your money in the banks, have it like 3 to 6 months worth of savings in the bank. So if anything happened, a case of emergency, you can get access to the money.
Mm-hmm.
And then like with the variable, when we talk about variable, we talk about the stock market. But you got to keep in mind, it depends on your age. So if you play the rule 100, the rule 100, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take 100 subtracted from your age, you see what's left over, what your risky.
Yeah, it determines your risk tolerance
Yeah,
basically. And so when it comes to putting your money in the market, I always tell people I really believe in, diversifying, but you do have to make sure that any money that you're putting in a market, especially if you don't understand how it works,
right.
you really need to be very careful of putting money in that you can't afford to lose, if that makes sense. Okay. So it's really, yeah. Yeah. What I see a lot of the times is that, just because people don't understand how the market is working, they'll tend to lose more money than they're actually making in the market.
Yeah,
And it's really because they don't understand like what happens to the ups and downs and things like that. And so that depends on, like you said, your age, that determines your risk tolerance, your assets and your income. Based off of all of that, hey, all the money that you can afford to lose, hey, put them in those vehicles. That's great. But if you feel like it's something that you need to, pay your bills and stuff like that, please don't, just go gamble in the stock market, because, it's really for people who are a little bit more well versed on, what's going on in there. But also
Yeah,
there's insurance,
yeah, insurance.
that's the index way that, money grows.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we're able to show
Like,
people,
give us
yeah.
some insight on insurance because I know that's become a big market. Um,
Hmm.
a lot of, and it's not new,
Yeah.
but a lot of people, in different cultures have utilized that and built wealth and legacies for their family based, specifically off of that.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that catch people's eye these days is just the concept of infinite banking. Okay, this is what we're talking about all the time because when it comes to insurance, like you said, it's been around since like
200 plus years.
yeah, the early days.
Yeah.
Okay, we have insurance companies that we work with that have been around since the 1800s. Okay, so it's been around for quite a while, but people are usually used to seeing it in reference to just death. Okay, when
Right.
they see they hear insurance, they think, oh, it's something that people get when I die. Okay, they don't think about the benefits that there is when you're living. And so a big part of what we do is educate people on all the ways that you can use insurance other than just a death benefit. There's living benefits is a really big deal these days because people, which is it's actually a good thing, people are living longer these
Yeah.
days. Okay, but what we don't realize as we're getting older, things that we used to have back then are no longer exist. Like even Social Security, they said Social Security is supposed to be going away.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
year
they're supposed to be
2036 or something like
yeah,
that.
supposed to be taking
Right.
away pensions as well
Yeah,
too.
taking
So
Look,
away
I'm trying to catch
pensions.
mine, but that's why I'm trying to retire now and catch mine.
Right, I know, right? They're putting people in a
yeah.
bind, but people are getting older. They do have health issues going on. A lot of people are going in long-term care facilities, and these things are not cheap.
Right.
Okay, they cost a good amount of money, and what's happening is that people are put in positions where they can't afford it.
Yeah.
But we show people, hey, with something like a life insurance policy, right? You can actually utilize your death benefit while you're living. If anything happens to you, if you're put into one of those long-term care facilities, or if you get Alzheimer's, or you get a heart attack, stroke, these are things that happen to people every day, unfortunately. And
Mm.
so that's one of the ways that we show people how to use life insurance policies, but also
Yeah. Also, what
the savings.
annuities? Yeah. So a lot of people utilize a fixed index annuity. It's almost similar to like people like a 401k or TSP or 403b or an IUL is almost compared to a Roth, but with the fixed annuities, just showing people a lot of people nowadays is with the government and they're losing their job. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with their retirement. You worked
Right.
at a job for 25 years, 30 years, and you think that income that you thought you saving up for is going to last you to the rest of your days that you go into retirement. So showing people how to actually protect the retirement with no losses, but have it grow with the market as well too.
Yep.
That's a plus plus. Most people most fear to go into retirement is run out of income.
Hmm.
So
That's
a
right.
lot,
That's
Yeah.
right. That's a big fear.
Yeah.
yeah,
No matter how much money you have, there's people with $1 million in their retirement accounts, and they're still worried. Like, man, is this enough? Is just enough? And
Look,
so, yeah.
I've been thinking about it since I put in my retirement papers for December. I've been
Hmm.
like trying to scale back on different things from vacation time and I'm not getting my hair as often as I want to or whatever and start doing my own hair now. And so it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna go back to doing my own hair at least for a little bit or whatever and treat myself, for different other things. But, you have to put that in perspective because you want to make sure that your money is growing and doing what it needs to do and available to you
Yes.
yeah.
if that
Yes.
time happens. We did have some comments
Okay.
I want to kind of highlight. We had a comment from Rob the Great 54 said Roth IRA, high yield savings accounts, HSA accounts, brokerage accounts. Investing is a long game and takes time. I guess he's
Yes.
trying to get
Yes.
from
Yes.
Elodie.
Hmm.
And and he said if you love to grow money as much as you spend money, you can do very well with investing. First start at learning where to put your money. I agree.
I agree. I agree. And
And then
that's one thing. Yeah.
yeah,
It takes time. Like he said,
like
a lot of these things take time. And I think we all need to be committed to just learning a little bit more about where we're putting our money. That's it's just one of the things. And so that's why we take so much time just educating people on our end. That's one of the services that we provide. You know, we talk to people about, you know, all of these things because it's important to understand. If you don't understand, then you're going to continue to live in a bubble and, you know, not be able to take advantage of, you know, all the ways that we can actually build wealth in this country. You know, we, as much as, you know, we talk about this country, this is the country of opportunity for a reason, right? So, you know, we really need to take advantage of the space that we're in where we're able to have so much information. You know, this is the age of information. So I definitely agree with Rob. I think
Yeah.
that's what his name was. Rob, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And then we had a question on trading.
Oh,
Trading.
trading. I
That's the
mean,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, we're not trading
trade. Yeah,
specialists,
we're not
okay?
trading specialists.
We
Okay. Okay.
might we might, you know, dabble here and there, okay? I
Yeah.
think day trading is something so specific. If it's something that you want to do, like Rob said, you have to take the time and study it and make sure that you do your proper research.
Yeah, definitely proper research because
Yes.
you can put a lot of money that you're expecting to make in the market, then you wind up losing it. So just keep that in mind. It's still risky. I don't not
Yeah,
too sure
it's
what way
risky for sure.
how you want to grow your money. It depends on your age as well too,
Yeah.
um, things like that. So
Yeah.
if you got disposable income that you want to be risky with, hey,
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of you know, our mentors, we have like $1 million earner mentors. A lot of them wait a long time before they even take, you know, investing like in that way seriously. And it's only because, you know, a lot of the times you have to kind of build wealth before you are a little bit more risky with it. You know, make sure that you have that foundation first. Make sure you have that foundation first before, you know, you start dabbling too much in, you know, those types of risky investments. But I do believe it's a great way to grow your money. But you know, I always like err on the side of caution because I just think about the average person. You know, the
Right.
average person like is not studying, you know, how to day trade. Like they're just like, oh, I think I'm gonna throw my money in some stocks. They get
Right.
Cash App or Robinhood or something like
Right.
that, and they just like try to do what they see everybody else doing, and most of the time it's like they're not necessarily looking that deep into it. And so that's why I'm always like, you know, make sure if it's something that you want to do, just research it. That's all.
Yeah. And I agree. Do your homework. Is highly important. I used to date somebody who was highly, invested in investing,
Yeah.
and they stayed on watching CNN channel and the stock market channel every single day. So wake up and that's the first thing they want to turn the TV on. And
Right,
yeah, so but I get it because if that's where you're investing and that's where your money is, moving and growing or whatever, you're gonna always pay attention to that. What's going on with the Dow, how this going and whatever, what's affecting it
hmm,
economically, what's affecting things, because a lot of that affects the stock market and the stocks that we're invested in as well. So that's important to do your homework, do your research for yourselves to know where, because I always said, oh, I want to, teach me how to do all that kind of stuff. But I was still kind of scared because I was like, I don't know if I want to put my money, the little money
right.
I have, yeah. So I'm slowly doing little bits and pieces of things
Hmm.
as I learn it. But I wish I had done this, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
had I known, what I've learned so far, had I done that 20, 30 years ago, it would have been really great. So,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's the whole important part of educating, because
Hmm.
had you had the education of this kind of stuff, and the things that are available and the resources and investing in what to do with your money and all that, then, people will probably invest a little bit earlier in their life
Absolutely.
later.
yeah,
Everybody only think about, our job, our TSPs, or our Roth,
Mm.
from our jobs for retirement, and we don't think past that sometimes. And sometimes we got to think past that, like you said, passive income. You want to have that residual income that keeps coming in, whether you
yeah,
have a job or not. That you're having that availability of those funds. So that's important.
Absolutely.
yep.
So, with your business, and I love the name that you guys call it, servants to legacy,
Mhm.
because um, when you have a family, and especially if you're part of a big family, we see a lot of times how people pass away, and there's not enough money to bury people.
Mm,
People are doing these little funds, GoFundMe's, or doing these
yeah.
certain things just to bury their loved ones. So, what are some important factors that people can start, even if they're starting off small, what they
Mhm.
can do to increase their chances of like building, their wealth and finance, so they're not put in positions where they're looking, to do some GoFundMe's, or
Mhm.
have a fish fry selling fish plates, that or t-shirts to bury somebody. I hate when I see that, especially with
Yeah.
our culture, because
Mm,
it's a cultural thing. When you talk about stuff like investments and legacy or whatever, a lot of times you see as a culture thing. Not ever, I think more of our culture is starting to pick up on creating legacies and leaving legacies, but
Mhm.
it's we're so far behind.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
So, other cultures, have already established that, been doing some of these things for years, and that's why they're so far ahead of us when it
Mm.
comes to like leaving legacies and leaving wealth for our children and our children's children. And so, what are some things that people can look at just to get started?
Mhm.
They say, well, I got some funds that I feel like I want to get started on something. What
Mhm.
things or some resources available that they can just get started on, even if they start in late, if they can get
Yeah.
started on it, that you would recommend them placing or moving their money to?
Yeah, absolutely. We really believe the simplest way to pass on generational wealth is through life insurance. And so that I believe is really like a foundation where you can start off. What we learned, life insurance has a very interesting history because there was, a time where Black people couldn't even get life insurance if they wanted to.
right.
I know everybody knows about like
Redlining,
redlining
yeah.
and stuff like that in, real estate, but that also existed in life insurance. And so it really makes sense that a lot of our people don't necessarily pass down wealth. It's because a lot of the times, they weren't even allowed to, put their money into life insurance policies. And so we're actually reading a book called Think and Grow Rich, The Black Choice. It talks about some of the earliest, African American founded life insurance companies. And
Right.
that was one of the major things that they wanted to do, was to help their communities pass down wealth. And so what we've seen is that people in other demographics, they are actually getting their children life insurance policies literally from birth.
From
Okay.
birth.
And it literally just makes sense because life insurance is one of those things. It does get more expensive when you're older.
Yeah.
But if you have a newborn, you get them a policy. First of all, for most of these permanent policies, you don't have to pay it for the rest of their life. You pay it for 10 years, and you're really, putting them in position to have that policy grow and compound over time. And so when they're older and they pass away, they are passing down wealth based off of you deciding to get them a policy when they were a newborn. And so just imagine, right, that we lived in a world where, everybody was getting their babies life insurance policies, and without even all the extra benefits that they bring, they're passing down wealth from generation to generation to generation. That's like one of the very basic things that you could do. And I think we always talk about this concept of, like insurance is one of those things that people don't think about it for themselves. People have insurance, on their phones, they have insurance on their cars,
Everything
they
else.
have insurance on their
Their dog.
TVs, yeah, their dogs,
All right.
but they don't have insurance on their lives. Like it's really crazy that we've almost been like brainwashed to value objects over our own lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that's like one of the more basic ways that you can just get a foot in the door. Hey, like I'm getting this policy. It's, even outside of the benefits for yourself, because I want to pass down wealth. I want to pass on a legacy where, wealth building is prioritized. And when you start that legacy for yourself, honestly, that's something that your kids will see, your grandkids will see,
Right.
Mhm.
and they'll learn from that, and then hopefully they'll pick up on it and pass down wealth to their families too.
Right.
So I think it's just as simple as that. Just getting yourself a life insurance policy, not even talking about term, perm, whatever, all the different types, but just a basic life insurance policy, just so you know that you're passing down wealth.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Any a little thing I would just add on, just getting that in place as well, but also tying it to a trust.
Mhm,
A lot
mhm.
of people that can lock it in for the next generation and keep on going down the line. A lot of people is really starting to get educated about wills and trusts and
Yeah,
having that insurance tied to that, where it can pass down that wealth to the next generation, because it's super important. You know,
absolutely.
super
Yeah. A
important.
lot of the times we actually end up having to educate people exactly about how much insurance they actually need. A lot of people, even when they know about insurance, they'll underinsure themselves too. So, what I've seen actually, like talking to a lot of different like life insurance carriers, you actually hear a lot. And one of the biggest things that I heard was that in the Caucasian demographic, the amounts for the life insurance policies are a lot higher. They'll get themselves like 1.5 mil. They'll get themselves $2 million policies. But in the Black and Brown communities, you'll see 25,000, 50,000, maybe 100,000, maybe 150, and it's because we really don't understand how much insurance we actually need.
Yeah.
One of the ways that we do that is actually something called dime. It's called debt, income, mortgage, education. I don't know if you ever heard of that, Shadana, but it's it's one of the things that we educate our clients on. It's the easiest way to know exactly how much insurance you need. You factor in how much debt you have. Your income is important because you think about replacing your income for 10 years. Take your annual income, multiply it by 10, right? Also, mortgage, if you have a mortgage, add on that onto the picture, because if you pass away, you still have a mortgage
Yep.
that needs to be paid off. Who's going to
Who's
pay
gonna pay it?
it?
Right.
Who's going to pay it? You have to factor that into insurance, but then also education. This is more for people who have young children. And if they pass away, who is going to help that child get, a complete education, a 4-year education? You have to factor in the cost that'll be. Sometimes it's 75,000. It could be $100,000, just for one child. And
Right.
so, what we've seen is that, we have families, like they have kids, and they might have only have like maybe like 75 to 100,000 in coverage. But in reality, they might need like a mil.
Yeah.
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 And people are wondering like how these other cultures are leaving trust
Mm-hmm.
all this, when they loved ones passed away. This is how they're doing it. This
Exactly.
is what they've been doing. This is how they're building generational wealth. And then guess what? That child is going to do the same thing when they have kids. Establish those funds, then establish that wealth there, and then and it just get passed down. That's why you see these family have legacies of wealth
Mm-hmm.
that has been generated, and people be wondering like, oh, they just got money. No,
Right.
they,
No.
they
Mhm.
was smart with their money.
Right.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Money's smart, okay?
Yeah.
You got to be smart with your money. And that's the thing. We can learn from people who are, successful in passing down wealth. You just have to pay attention to those signs. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are in their own bubble, but if you want to have the outcome of success, you have to find somebody that is your, idea of success, and really follow the blueprint of what they're doing. That's an
Oh,
important part
that's
too.
correct. That's right. Because I remember asking when I was talking about the person I dated. I remember asking questions like and the things he would say to me or whatever. I kept that, and so when I was doing changes in my TSP and doing all, I remembered all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. You always want to learn, be a sponge, pick up. If you see that somebody is successfully doing something, and and you're trying to get there, or you want to get there, or whatever, then ask those questions. Pull from those people with those with the knowledge and the resources or whatever, so that way you can provide that for yourself down the road,
Yeah.
and you're not just sitting there watching other people secure their bag.
Right.
Right.
You're securing the bag as well, and it might take you a little bit longer because you're
Yeah.
getting started later, but nevertheless,
Hmm.
better late than never. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
I would definitely suggest, if there's people that you can feed off of and get information and learn from, do that because that's highly important. It's time out
Hmm.
for us to be too ignorant on what we need to do for our families and the Bible does tells us that we should be leaving an inheritance for our children.
Yes.
So that's a legacy, leaving an inheritance for our children's children. That means
Yeah.
I ain't worried about my two right here. I'm worried
Right.
Right.
about when they have kids.
Right.
I'm trying to establish now for their kids. So and if we take on that concept and take on that, then we're gonna, position ourselves to do what we can for our families, um, well after we're gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So on another question I wanted to ask is, I know, how can people get more information from you guys, from your business? Is there a platform that you guys use that can be reached out if people need to reach out, have more questions? How can they reach you guys to get more available resources? Or sometimes people be scared to ask questions on a platform
I
like, well,
know.
I'll
Yeah.
ask in private,
I
I don't want people in
know.
my business kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just open like that. But,
Right.
um, but if they need to do that and want to reach out to ask more questions or get
Hmm.
information, how can they do that?
Honestly, I think the best way, like we're very millennial, we use
Yeah.
Instagram for
Maybe.
everything.
Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
Instagram IG.
I
So
know
send us
y'all
a
are a married couple. So, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
send us a DM. That's one thing. We're always ready to, sit down with you at the time that we have both available. We do free consultations,
Yeah.
almost every day. We're giving out free information, free, resources, all that kind of stuff. And so just reach out to us. We'll set up a time that we can meet and we can hop on a Zoom. And we're very open. Like I'm always about just helping. That's literally why we named our business the what we did, servants to legacy, because I really believe that serving our community is first, and a lot of this information, I just love that we're in a position where we can give it out for free.
Yeah.
Because I love to help people. And so if you have any questions, reach out. Okay, we're very accessible. And so DM us, we'll get in contact, and we'll set a time that we can sit down on a Zoom and talk about, some of the things that might be of value to you, when it comes to learning some of this information. So yeah, I would say that's the best part.
Yeah. I'll say that's the best way to reach out to us.
Mhm.
Outside of that, yeah.
Yeah, I would say also we love coming like to, do presentations in person too.
Yeah.
That's
If
one of
you're
the things that, yeah.
Yeah, if you're in the DMV, let us know. We love coming out really
Uh-huh.
just to educate. I'm setting up something right now for the senior homes just to educate the
Yeah, yeah.
staff on how to actually,
Mhm.
learn to, put things in place. But, we want to just put our name out there, but also put the education and information out there as well too. So
Right, exactly.
Right. We had a comment, Rob the Great. Life insurance and other assets such as property are great for building generational wealth.
Yes.
Yes.
He's absolutely
yes,
correct.
yeah,
Absolutely correct. That's one of the things, in the future, once we, have built the foundation that we want, we really also want to get into property as well. I would say, just learning how to, like I said, set that foundation is good. So that by the time you have like all of your ducks in a row, you have the freedom to, invest in real estate and all these kind of things. So that's definitely something that's on our, on our
yeah,
list of things to do for sure.
yeah. We tell ourselves always to focus on building our Mississippi River first, and then to
Okay.
spring off to different avenues to, leverage, the wealth that we've been building between what we're doing right now. So.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, let me ask you guys this. Name one financial tip that you swear by.
Oh, nice. Where?
Whereby,
Um,
I think
hmm.
y'all mentioned one earlier.
Which one?
You
Because we
said
have a lot of tips.
you said you said what you guys do, that was important to you guys to pay, when you're doing certain things, which
Oh yes, that one is literally like the golden rule. Like, don't think that you have to be making a certain amount of money in order to like put it aside. You know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
could do the same thing with this small amount of money that you have right now than you can as with the big amounts of money. And so, yeah, I would say
Yeah.
that really is like the biggest tip because, it kind of changes your perspective because
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people make excuses as to why they can't get themselves together. But I'm like, no, stewardship is stewardship, and no matter how much money you have. Okay.
Exactly. And that brings to my point about tithing. You know, I'm a,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a tither, so I know the importance of tithing, and I know the
Yes.
benefits and the blessings of tithing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I had very little, I was still
Yeah.
tithing. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
when I, got to the point that I am now, like, who would not, test God on
Yeah.
the benefits of tithing, because I've seen, where I was
Mm-hmm.
now. And so it's such a big difference. And so if people who are looking to invest, I would tell them their first investment should be tithing. If you're believing,
Yeah.
first investment should be tithing, because you're going to get more back from that. And God tells us that in his word. He said, try me, test me.
Yes.
Right.
Won't
Yes.
I open up a window, and give you
Mm-hmm.
more that you've been asking for. So, and I'm a firm believer in, the Ephesians 3:20, exceedingly and abundant above all we can ask. So when we're tithers, that's what God do. He does
Absolutely.
that.
That is,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of our main things. Like, tithing, you never know, what God is going to do with that money that you set aside. And at the end of the day, it's, he gave it to you. So,
Right.
Right.
that 10%, you shouldn't
Belongs to
really be
him.
hesitating. Yeah, like,
Right.
always our goal is to like go above and beyond because, God has done so much for us. Just tithing is just a small portion of, giving back. And also, it's great to see I know everybody has their home church. I love our church because I know that they're using those funds wisely because I see the impact that they're having in the community,
Oh
the
yeah.
outreach that they're able to have. And I love seeing that I'm contributing to that as well. And so
Right.
that's, it's definitely a good thing to really get into that habit.
Yeah.
You
I'll
know.
say the habit is the key right there. If you
Mhm.
smart that habit small, it's going to compound over time and just going to be like, okay, cool. I created this flex, this muscle
Yeah.
when it was small. Now, just call me big flex right now.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. And it becomes like, second nature. You don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Soon as money come in, I got to tithe.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
Tithe
Right.
off of
Right.
that. I got to tithe off of that, because you want to continue to see increase.
Right.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Um, so I pay it forward through giving back with knowledge and my time. Okay.
That's
God, hey, look,
Yeah.
we different people pay
hmm
Yeah.
what they pay, giving back, doing certain things, however you see fit. But
hmm
God definitely tells us in His Word about a tither and the
Yeah.
blessings that He has for the tither, for doing that and trusting Him and testing Him with that. So before we leave, I want to ask you guys if you can go back to 21 and give yourself some financial advice. What
Mm.
You said 21.
21.
age 20
Ooh.
first became the young adult,
Yes.
out your mom and daddy house, living on your own, you smelling yourself, you grown.
Yeah, no, that's
Hey,
good.
21.
Man, back when I was 21, I did not know a lot of anything. So, I
But what
feel
you know
like
now, what would you tell your 21-year-old self now, based off
Mm.
what you know now?
I would tell my 21-year-old self to, you know, get on that internet and look up how you can get yourself together when it comes to finances, especially when it comes to credit. Okay, credit is one of the things that was, not explained to me when I was younger, and so I had to learn about how to get that together. But also, I would put my money in, an IUL. I would, because if I had started at 21, 10 years of compounded growth, I would have had a lot of money, in my cash value that I could have used to even invest in some of the things that, people are looking to invest in, like property and all that kind of stuff. It definitely would have put me a little bit more ahead. So I would say, yeah, building credit is something that I would educate myself on, but then also, how to utilize that IUL to do some of the things that I wanted to do at that time. I couldn't figure it out, but
Yeah.
yeah,
What
when I was 21, clueless.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with those two things as well too.
Yeah.
And one more thing, I would tell my 21-year-old self is seek a mentor
Yes.
and
Yeah. No,
guidance.
he got that good one. Yeah.
Because if I was guided and mentored to go out there and be
Mhm.
in the right environment of people to go expand my vision, really chase after my goals as well too. It's like a lot of people, I would be in a different state of mind overall. But
Yeah,
but yeah, I would say seek mentorship and guidance.
for sure. That's a good one.
Awesome. I like that. I like that. Like I was saying earlier, the people that have the knowledge, you've seen them successfully do some things when it comes to that. Pull from those people, pull from those resources. So that
Yeah,
way, nobody's saying that you got to sit and, be in classroom settings, but you can
Right.
from people, you know, um, based off of the success that you've seen them achieve, with building their wealth and managing their finances. So guys, that wraps up our session for today, the building wealth and finances. Again, let us know give us your Instagram handle so that way they can reach out to you guys if they need to.
All right. So my Instagram handle is my name, Asha.speller. For James.
yeah. My Instagram handle is chef_woo, and that's with three O's.
Okay.
We also have our page at Servants to Legacy. So you can hop on there too. But either way, if you DM us on any of our pages, we will respond. And looking forward to hearing from you guys.
Yes.
Oh, awesome! I love millenniums because they use that IT, that technology, that modern.
Yes.
Y'all
Yeah.
that's gonna be y'all motor skills. That's why I utilize my daughter. I'm like, if I didn't have my daughter, I don't know how I'd be doing this
Oh
platform.
yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to her and shout
Yeah.
out to
Uh,
y'all.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah. That's what I told you. I said when she did y'all flyer, I said they look like money.
I
I loved it. I loved it.
love it.
So Jada just put the information on.
Oh, okay.
Yes. That was
So
nice. That was quick.
I know,
I
right?
love it. Thank you so
So
much.
Yes,
reach
yes.
out to Asha and James if you guys are interested or have more questions based off what their business provide. We've seen a lot of comments throughout the chat, based off other information as well. So, people, we can no longer be ignorant on this stuff. We have not, can we ask not? So ask the questions, find out what you need to find out to get
Hmm.
yourself in a greater position to, create and leave a legacy for your children's children. Now, if
Yes.
you
Yes,
have no
yes,
children, then it doesn't matter. You still want to create a legacy. You
yes.
got some god kids, or sister, brother, siblings, family members, or whatever, or even a dog. That you so to, because I'm telling you, Brownie's gonna be all up in my wheel. My grand dog is all up in my wheel.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah. But I appreciate you guys for coming on. I hope this won't be the last time that you guys come on to Chit Chat Podcast. You guys are more than welcome to come back and share in with anything that you guys have going on with your business that you would like for us to take part in or know about. We welcome that. So just reach out to us if you need to. And we appreciate you guys.
Thank you
Yes,
so
yes.
much,
Thank you.
Shadana, for having us on.
Yes, definitely
Definitely,
appreciate it.
yes, we would definitely do it again. So,
Okay. Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And tell the big boss I said hello.
okay, we will, we will.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a great evening. And guys, we will see you guys back next Sunday for another episode of Chit Chat Podcast where we chat all things women. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye,
All right, see
everyone.
y'all.
Bye.